Coming up, Google makes it in Hollywood. Is this another Facebook movie in the making? Would you pay for stuff using Twitter? Well, American Express sure thinks you will. Hey, Silicon Valley wants to reform immigration. Is this a smart idea? Or just another excuse to suppress wages in the tech sector? Oh, we got the smackdown of the week with Tesla versus the New York Times. Find out who ends up on top and who ends up recharged. All these stories and more on this episode of Downloaded. Hello and welcome to Downloaded. This is the show where we gather the most opinionated voices in the tech field today, focus all that energy on all the stories that are impacting the tech world. I am your host, Jim Louderback. Joining me today, I'm really happy to have Shannon Morse, host of Hack 5. It's great to have Shannon here. Shannon and I have done a bunch of stuff together, so it's always nice to do stuff with you again.
Yes.
And another good bud of mine, Brian Solis. Brian Solis, author of new book, What's the Future of Business, along with 4 other books, and principal analyst at the Altimeter Group. So it's great to have you too. Brian knows more about social media than most of us will ever even contemplate, which is awesome. And we're going to jump right into the first story, which a little bit less about social media on this one, but it's about security. And Obama, interestingly enough, just signed this executive order about cybersecurity, basically going over to NIST, the guys that set the standards, you know, temperature and all that stuff. They say, set some standards in security. Shannon, what do you think? Do we need standards for security? Is this going to help us?
Yes, we do need standards for security so bad. There's so many companies that we've heard about, especially recently, Twitter, New York Times, that have been getting hacked by, China or whoever. It's really important to have some kind of standard ethical procedure for each of these businesses to adhere to that will make sure they don't get hacked in the future.
Well, once we have standards, doesn't that mean there are going to be standard ways that hackers can break in? Brian, what do you think?
Well, look, hacking is a way of life, and so I think it's a gesture to show that we're taking this seriously, but I don't know.
Just a gesture, though, right?
I don't think that there's anything that we can do, but I do like the idea of just reminding everybody just how important it is, especially as we move online, that this stuff is serious and we need to protect it.
So Obama going out with an executive order on this one, right? Not, I guess the House tried to pass something last year. This is called CISPA.
CISPA.
Well, okay, so tell me about CISPA. Why didn't you like it?
So this is the Cyber Intelligence Security Protection Act.
CISPA.
Yeah, CISPA. And that basically meant that businesses would be able to send over information, the ones and zeros, the source code about different hacks that they have seen come through their servers to the Homeland Defense. So
the Homeland guys are going to be able to get all the ones and zeros.
Yeah.
And there was a little bit of an issue with them violating our own privacy,
yeah,
right?
So it was very, very vague. The whole CISPA bill was vague. It didn't explain entirely about American civil liberty, our rights. It didn't say anything about our privacy being protected, even when these businesses are able to send over all that information.
So the House tried to do this, didn't work out, which sounds like is a good thing from your perspective.
Yeah, the president was like, I'm going to veto that bill, so don't even bring it near me.
So now the president has something in. Do you think, Brian, this means that we'll see action in Congress on this that's more akin to what the president signed?
I don't know. I hope so. I mean, I think that the government is also struggling with what this really means and what it's really about. I think, honestly, if they knew a little bit more about technology, they would have figured out better ways to engage with constituents as well. So I think they're learning. I think, unfortunately, though, the way politics work, they're going to have to hammer this out back and forth until we actually get an understanding of what to do about this.
Well, look, the hackers move a lot more quickly than Washington, D.C. So I
agree with that.
Yeah, I don't hold out a lot of hope that this is actually going to make a difference. But I do think it's important that Washington's starting to get serious on it. I think, unfortunately, they are a day late and $1 short on this story. I want to move on to our next story. A couple of friends of Revision 3. We're talking the guys at Gadget, GDGT, sold to AOL. So first of all, Peter and Ryan, congratulations. Now, these guys used to work at Engadget. Turns out Peter is actually going to be at Engadget again, but a lot of what AOL bought with the technology that Gadget had built up over the last couple of years, engineering, design, sounds like it's a really good thing for them. Question to you, is AOL trying to get back into the technology leadership space here? Why do you think they even made this move, Shannon?
Well, it sounds like they're trying to get back into it. I mean, Gadget has been a very, very big website for the past few years. I have an account on there. The one thing I'm a little worried about, though, is having AOL control that whole Gadget website and be able to see things that I want to purchase in the future.
Yeah, I mean, look, the guys at Gadget took a social first approach. They said, look, we're not going to do the reviews ourselves, although there was a little bit of that in there. We want to have you, as a user, tell us what you think and add in your feelings and your opinions and really turn the site over to you. Brian, did that make sense from a review perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. In every trust barometer, like the one published by Edelman recently, you see that peer trust is going up, whereas trust in executives or spokespeople are going way down.
Yeah.
So I think it's absolutely great. But I would say that the one thing that I appreciate that AOL noticed in Gadget is the experiential approach. So they are buying not just the whole dynamic or the technology of reviews, but the user experience. They learned a lot.
They did build a good user experience. I do think it's interesting, though, talking about the spokesmen and experts versus users. I mean, a site like Engadget, right, which is really built on experts talking about new products and new gadget and gear, is that really going to be diminished over time? Do we think that those expert reviewers, like we see it in Engadget and Gizmodo and PC Mag and PC World, are going away?
You know, this is a philosophical question. I would argue that PC Magazine versus Engadget, say both in the early days, one was an expert and one might have been considered sort of an authoritative peer. And I think that was sort of the magic of blogs, is that even though somebody was, quote unquote an expert, you felt like you were reading somebody who was a buddy or a friend.
Right.
They just approach you at a different level.
That's how I approach my reviews, because I do a review show, and anytime that I discuss something, I discuss it from a consumer standpoint. I'm like, hey, this is why I would use it. This is how I think they're trying to target the market. I'm not trying to come at it as, oh, well, they're sponsoring us, so I'm definitely going to give them a yay or a nay.
Yeah, and I totally get you on the desire to have that sort of peer, that friendship thing. That's one of the things when I was running PC Magazine, I tried to bring into it was, we are not on we're not in an ivory tower, we're not sitting on a pedestal, we're just like everybody else. We just happen to get the stuff a little bit sooner than you do. And we see a lot of this stuff, so I'm not sure how successful I was. The magazine doesn't exist anymore, so you can take that for what you want.
It was around for a while,
It was, yeah, but I was one of the last ones running it. So, but the website's still there and it's working pretty well. I agree. But does it really mean we're all product reviewers in the end? I think it does, actually.
Yeah, it kind of does.
I mean, how do you rise to the top? Shannon, you didn't start out at a PC Magazine or PC World and go through the ranks and have somebody hand you a column.
I went to college for restaurant management.
Yeah, you are one of the top experts in security and products. I mean, I trust what you think about products, and I know hundreds and thousands of people do as well. And so, but you're, I don't know, I won't call you an every woman, but you've gotten there.
Yeah, I just take the time to research and to understand and to experiment and to take things into my own little lab, aka my computer desk, and just figure out how things work and to make sure that they work like they're supposed to, like they're advertised like they do.
Speaking of working like it's supposed to, I want to move on to my next story, which is a really, I find this one a little entertaining. American Express is going to allow you to buy things via Twitter. Yes, that's right, Twitter. So you go, and it's not just like you go on Twitter and go like, I'm buying. You actually have to go look. It's almost like Woot for Twitter, right? Because there's only certain things that they're selling. You have to go in and say you want it, and put a hashtag in, and then they tweet you back and say you got to put this hashtag back. It's like takes like 15 minutes. Brian, Twitter is an excellent tool. I don't think it's designed for this.
No, it's certainly not. But look, for all intents and purposes, I do applaud American Express for thinking outside of the box.
Okay, wait, they're not your client, are they?
They are not a client.
Okay, good.
But they have done some really interesting things, like on Facebook with Link Like Love.
Well, in Foursquare, they did some cool stuff with location-based stuff.
Foursquare
and discounts, that's fun.
$5 off.
And
is
the
Twitter
small business deals that they have.
Is Twitter a social network too far for them?
Is Twitter even a social network? I don't know. It's all about user-defined streams, right? So if I'm following people that are riddling my streams with deals and the deals are good, I might be interested. Mechanically, I just don't see it as a natural way to buy anything.
Mm-hmm.
Well, look, you know how people use these social nets on Twitter really well. Is there really a desire among certain groups of people to share every purchase they make? Remember that credit card that was like, yeah, we're going to put it out there, and every time you buy something, we're putting it on Twitter. Lucky you.
There's data that shows that there is an increasing amount of self-expression through purchases, and that we're going to see even more people sharing what it is that they're buying online because they enjoy the response that they get back, and they also think that it's aspirational. So they share the things that they buy that make you look at them a certain way, but it's also very strategic. This is a deals thing. I don't see it as being as much self-expression as others.
Shannon, what was the last toy you bought for your cat, Starbuck?
Last toy. The little laser that can move around on its own. You just stick batteries in it.
Oh, yeah. Are you proud of that?
Play.
Would you have tweeted that out?
Well, I would tweet out a video on Vine of her playing with it. I wouldn't actually tweet out the purchase.
Yeah, exactly. It's the experience of using it. Interesting. Yeah, that's a good point. I don't know. What would your friends think if you started tweeting out every purchase you made?
Nope, not going to do it.
Not going to happen.
I am not even. First of all, it takes 15 minutes because you have to wait for them to confirm the purchase, and then you have to tweet out a second hashtag. That's going to take way too long. People are going to move on from it before that time.
It's like two-factor authentication.
It is, but nobody wants two-factor authentication when they're trying to make a purchase for one
I want
little
instant
thing.
gratification. Although, but I agree. There are some things that I would tweet about what I bought. Like I should have tweeted this morning, or actually last night. See the new Sonos soundbar, for example?
Yes, I have
Amazing.
seen
So
that.
I was in their gallery 2 days ago, when the day they launched it, and went in and played around with it and looked at it. I was like, wow, this thing is amazing. And I have a real need at home for my big screen TV to have something on that because the setup in there sucks. So I bought it this morning or last night. I bought it last night, and I should have tweeted it out. And I even bought it with American Express. So here's what I think they should do: is when you buy something, they ought to allow you to tell the world about it if you want to. But I think this whole two-factor thing is crazy. I mean, Brian, where do you think payments and the internet and social networking is going? I mean, Square's making a go at it, a bunch of other companies. There's a transformation happening. This may be on the sort of failure side of it, but certainly we are moving in some direction.
You know, there is a very interesting thread that goes back several years about Facebook as a bank. And because Facebook is by far one of your most portable identities, there are arguments that could be said that Facebook could essentially be your Google Wallet, which your phone could also be your digital wallet. So there's certainly a lot of standards that are playing around out there. Facebook is experimenting with its credits. So I still think it's coming back to the phone, though.
It's going back. Yeah, I agree. I mean, you've got the phone with you all the time.
It's your digital wallet.
It's your digital wallet, and when you lose it, you're turning it off right away. So, all right, let's move on to an immigration story. Interesting story in the New York Times about Silicon Valley and illegal immigrants that are joining forces. Really, the goal here for a number of the companies in Silicon Valley is to bring in more science, technology, math, engineering, STEM folks into the U.S. I have a little bit of an issue with this story, and I wonder what you guys think. Shannon, I'm going to start with you. Should we be restricting illegal immigration while at the same time letting in the brainiacs?
Okay, when you put it that way, it sounds kind of fishy to just be like,
I know, did I lead with that? I'm sorry.
You're smart. You get to come into our United States because you're special. Yeah, it's not very nice.
Yeah, I wonder though, in the, so I don't really buy the whole world is flat thing that Thomas Friedman talked about, but I do believe that there are people who are valuable and are valuable cross-border, and I think for us as a country, we should have more of those. I'm not sure immigration is the best way to do it, but Brian, what do you think?
Look, I'm all for getting smart people here. It's only going to help our economy, considering that our schools aren't necessarily helping our own, our own.
Yeah, we're not doing a good job at educating STEM, are we?
Get smarter. I think there's a certain way to do it. I just don't have an answer to it, but it is important. It really is important, and I do think, though, that it should inspire government to figure out how we can also bring about smarter kids out of school.
Well, and I think that even on immigration, there's also getting work visas. Facebook wanted to get 80 or 90 of their engineers in for a while. It might have been 6 months or a year or 3 months to work together, and they couldn't do it, and they had to put them up in Ireland. So in the end, for Silicon Valley, there were hotels, there was dining, there was all these. I mean, there was a lot of money that we forewent. That's right. We foregoed. I don't know what the word is, but we lost out on.
Left it on the table.
We left on the table. Thank you very much, because we didn't allow them in, and so I have a real issue with that. I do think that in some way we need to figure out how to let people who are smart and who can help add value to our country in. But
I mean, God knows we do need those jobs, don't we?
Absolutely. But who decides what's important and what isn't?
Yeah.
Right?
That's what we need to figure out.
Isn't farming important too? I don't know.
Well, of course it is.
I'm not smart enough to decide this stuff. Shannon, any idea how you would change the immigration laws if somebody gave you a magic wand?
I don't even have a clue.
I know, this is a really tough topic.
When it comes to politics, I'm like, I'm out.
You know what's interesting on the immigration that you can do? You can buy your way in.
If
you invest, in some ways, like $500,000 in the U.S., you can get a green card and move in. There is, in Vermont, these guys at a mountain way up in the north part of Vermont on the Canadian border, they're building this $8 million ski slope and an indoor water park and all this other stuff by going to people and saying, give us $500,000, you get a green card, and you're investing in the economic areas that need money. And so I think that's fascinating that you can actually put money in and you can get a green card and come to the United States.
Wow, that's crazy.
But you can't put your brain in and do it.
Yeah.
So I think there's a little bit of a disconnect here. And I just want, it's an interesting story. I don't think there are any good answers to it, as we talked about, but it's worth talking about. So let's move on to a story that there are also no good answers, but there sure is a lot of data. This is the Tesla flap. You guys have been following this story, right? So New York Times did a really good story about driving the Tesla out here in California and what fun it was. Same author picked up a Tesla in New York in the middle of the cold. It was freezing, like it is in the winter on the East Coast. 10 degrees, 20 degrees. Took it on a trip, wanted to see how it did. Turns out, according to the story in the New York Times, it did not do well. The guys at Tesla, though, once burned, twice shy. Whenever they give a car to a journalist, they keep logs on it. And their logs didn't match, they think, what the journalist actually said. There's a lot of he said, she said on this one. I love this. I've got the Twitter from Elon Musk that he put up. New York Times article about Tesla range in cold is fake. Vehicle logs tell true story. They didn't actually charge to Max. Took a long detour. We saw those logs today where they actually showed that he said he was going 45. He was actually going 60 and 54. At one point he was going up to 80 miles an hour. He said he was going 45. He didn't. He said he charged it up. He didn't charge it up. Blah, 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 blah. I think to me the real thing is there's two different aspects of the story I want to explore. One's a technical one, which we'll get to in a minute. The other is, okay, they told him to ride this Tesla on Route 95 on the East Coast. Anybody who's ever driven on 95, and I think we all have, if you drive at 55, you got trucks up your butt faster than you can say boo.
So raise your hand if you've ever been 55 on the highway. That's what I thought.
Only when I was on the on-ramp and I went through 55 to get to 75. And we've all been
that slow.
Yeah, we've all been in the winter on the East Coast where it's hot, it's cold.
You are not going to turn off your heat.
I'm not going to turn my heat off. I'm going to leave it up, and I'm going to crank it up to 70 or 75. It's freezing outside. So I think the fact that the Tesla guys are like, oh, you didn't do what you should have done because you were trying, you didn't really do what real world users would do, and you didn't say, neither of them were in the real world, right?
Yeah.
So I think first of all that's an issue. Dispute, thought, discuss.
You first.
Okay, so Tesla coming out and posting this whole blog post and saying, okay, first off, New York Times, you're wrong. And then they posted these graphs. But the thing they didn't post is any kind of raw data, any kind of actual information from the Tesla motor.
They did the graphs, but not the raw logs. What are they hiding?
Anybody can make a graph. Hello, Photoshop. What? It makes no sense to me.
All right, Brian, what's your take on this story?
All right, so bravo to Elon for his wonderful public relations stunt, for deflecting sort of, I think, what is a real world experience. You can't take that away. I don't care if it wasn't fully charged. I don't care if he hit 80. I mean, it was probably a survival strategy at one point so that a truck wouldn't flatten him on the highway. But look, the reality is that he made a lot of phone calls. Those phone calls were sort of corroborated by what was said back. The cold diminishes the battery. There's certain conditioning you have to do. And if you have to turn your heater off, drive slower to extend the range of your car, then that is going to contribute to range anxiety, and that's just a real world, that's just a reality that these car manufacturers are going to have to deal with. So the better thing to do is to maybe not advise them on taking that type of route for the test drive. And
but it was a legit test drive, okay?
Yeah.
I mean, the guy drove around Manhattan. Okay, he was giving a tour for his brother, but you ever try to get a parking place in Manhattan?
Yeah,
You're driving around the block a lot. So I think that what this indicates, first of all, is, yes, Elon, I think, did a good job getting the word out here, but still, I think Tesla's got a little bit of a black eye right here, right?
No doubt.
I mean, you gonna buy a Tesla now?
I totally agree.
If I could, I still would.
Let me pull out my wallet.
And what it makes you think, by the way, and so earlier today, I was driving on 280 up from San Jose to San Francisco, driving along over on the side of the road, a brand new Tesla sedan. Now, I don't know if the guy in it pulled over so he could make a phone call or if he pulled over because he didn't have any more juice. But of course, I thought the worst. I thought he had no juice.
We better check the logs.
No, we gotta check the logs.
Raw data, thank you very much.
So I think this is a major hit for Tesla. I think it's a problem. It just don't fight with the New York Times.
No.
Right? Those guys, they got a lot of ink.
I will say this, though. It could have been two black eyes. They'll probably walk away with one because of Elon's response.
So one of the more interesting aspects of this, I think that's interesting as well, lithium-ion batteries again in the news, right? We had lithium-ion in the news with the Dreamliner 787. We're not sure what's going on there yet. Now we've got cold weather, reduced range. I tell you, when I take my notebook computer out on the road and it's cold outside, I'm not working outside because my range is going to be lower on my on my notebook computer. What is it about lithium ion that causes this degradation? And is it maybe not the right battery technology for electric cars? What do you think, Shannon?
I'm not really sure what it is about it.
Well,
I haven't really
it's the chemistry
studied
thing,
the lithium-ion batteries.
But if that chemistry is going to degrade in the cold,
then make them bigger.
Make them bigger, but then the cars are heavier. There's a delicate balance between
there's
weight
a huge delicate
and delivery and range. And
it's from everything from phones all the way up to Teslas, and it doesn't matter what it is. If you make it bigger, people don't want it.
People don't want it. And this is something we've been crying about for a long time, battery technology and how we come up with better batteries. Maybe for electric cars, Brian, I don't know what you think, we need a better battery technology.
Well, I'm sure that better battery technologies exist. It's whether or not they're affordable to put into a car at that scale.
Right.
The question I have, though, for lithium, I mean, obviously there are some issues with it, the Dreamliner, aside. If it's as much as a 10% hit in cold weather, to me that's pretty substantial. And the whole thing about, and especially in the New York Times article about the conditioning of the batteries, which takes some heat, which takes more electricity. I don't know. I do appreciate what Tesla's doing. I do also like the Fisker approach where they have an engine that does kick in to charge the batteries as the car is
you have an
going.
alternative. You have a backup system.
You have a backup.
Thing about that is you got no backup system. Now, one of the this might actually lead us more towards hydrogen cars, for example, or fuel cell cars. I think some of the fuel cell stuff is really interesting. I've got a story up here about some of the hydrogen cars. You see one right there, and maybe we go with hydrogen instead of with just straight electric. I don't know the answer. All I know is that I am questioning whether I'm going to buy an electric car anytime in the near future. And I was kind of gung-ho before this.
I just bought a new car. I'm good.
What'd you buy?
Bought a Ford, of course.
Good
Ford
for you.
Titanium, yeah.
Good. Was
Ford
it
Focus.
Any sort of electric technology or just go gas
No
all the
electric
way?
technology whatsoever. I got a nice little computer in it that has a little touch screen, and it's gas all the way.
So one thing
High
that's leading me to a simpler car. My car, the reason why I went to San Jose is my car last weekend suddenly decided it didn't like oil in its engine anymore and lost all its oil in about a mile. The oil drain plug came out. I am casting no aspersions on anybody who changed my oil 2 weeks before I got my car. But this happened. But I do like the idea of an electric motor that has way fewer parts. So
yes.
Who knows? We'll see what happens to my car. Maybe I will get it. I'm not going to get a Tesla though because it's, as you said, too expensive for my Diet Coke taste. Let's move on to our next story. I do like the Tesla story though. This one also pretty cool. This is a new movie coming out. Looks like Google helped with it. It's called The Internship, and I actually have the trailer running on my computer. It's Vince Vaughn and Owen Wilson. I gotta tell you, this one sounds like the Silicon Valley version of Dumb and Dumber, or the Step Brothers, or something like that. Basically, these two guys are salesmen. They sell expensive watches, and their company goes out of business, so they get an internship at Google, and it's basically the old guys versus the young guys. I think it's kind of funny. First of all, it's funny because they were selling high-end watches, and the premise of the movie is that watches are no longer, people don't buy them anymore. Who's building a watch? Apple.
Everybody.
Kickstarter. Right, you said
everybody on
Kickstarter. Like a
Kickstarter.
zillion watches on Kickstarter.
There's the Pebble. There's all sorts.
So maybe they're just selling the wrong kind of watch.
Maybe.
But I also think, Brian, does this mean Silicon Valley's arrived, that it's now the butt of jokes in a movie?
I don't. It looked like a long commercial for Google. But what was that name of the movie that I think it was the same cast where they took over a frat house and started their own? They were selling speakers out of a van at the beginning of the movie.
Oh yeah. Well, there's all these movies like this. There's Blades of Glory. There's I know.
It's going to come to me, but it's the same movie. It's just that
it's the same movie
it's
in
with
different
Google.
places, right? These guys do the
it doesn't
same
mean
thing.
that Silicon Valley has arrived. I do think that it does show that it's popular culture. I mean, Google's a verb now. Everybody Googles something. I think it's funny. I'll probably watch it when it comes out on Apple TV.
All right. Well, so yeah, I'm going. It's like they did Wedding Crashers, right? Remember that?
Yes.
It wasn't Wedding Crashers, I know. Okay, so here's what I think about this. So before that, good. Is this a good thing for Google or a bad thing for Google, Shannon?
It really depends on how they portray Google itself and the employees that work there. From what I saw in the trailer, it looks like they might portray the Googlers as either D-bags or such huge nerds that they just don't stand out in society at all. And I'm a little worried that Google's going to look at that, the actual employees, and they're just going to be like, that's not what we're like at all, and they're going to hate it.
There was one scene about, raise your paddle, green or red, whether you're, it's a good idea to have a beer with your boss, and everybody said red paddle except for Owen Wilson and Vince Vaughn, and that's not any Googler that I know.
No, exactly. I mean, look,
it's not.
Beer is part of the culture here in Silicon Valley.
Yeah,
cheers to that. I think it's also interesting that the film is directed by Sean Levy, who directed Night at the Museum. So,
oh, really?
Yeah, so you know what? There's some cred on this movie.
All right. Some comedy in there.
I've decided the best place to watch this movie, Mountain View. I want to see it debut.
Have a screener.
At a screener in Mountain View and be surrounded by people from Google.
There's going to be huge riots.
See what they think. Yeah, huge battle. So anyway, really, that's our movie news of the week. I think it's going to be really interesting to look at that. Another, actually, entertainment story of the week that is just really interesting. Freddie Wong and the guys from Video Game High School on Kickstarter raised nearly $810,000, the most ever for a movie, on Kickstarter to do season 2 of Video Game High School. Now they raised $273,000 for the first version. Freddie wants to make the Harry Potter of video games, video game movies. First of all, $810,000 sounds like a lot. Brian, that's not that much for a movie, though, is it?
I don't know. I mean, if you talk to Hooman Khalili and his new movie that was shot on a phone, Olive, they were on a really limited budget too. I think anything's possible. It's just how much people are willing to take for their work. So,
well, but these guys do a lot of special effects. Yeah. I mean, they're great. They're great at doing shorts. They've done some really great stuff on. I mean, they're awesome on YouTube.
Well, we do special effects on our podcasts, and those definitely don't cost almost $1 billion, $1 million.
We started Kickstarter for special effects for
yes.
Yeah.
Well,
see how much you can raise.
That would be awesome, actually. Be awesome. I had a friend who did a Kickstarter recently, or Indiegogo, and he raised about $200,000 for his movie project, and it's about a real-life video game. It's called Pure Ownage, the movie. And they definitely don't need that much money. They raised twice as much as what they were asking for.
What were they asking for? Does the story
no, I think they just want to get as much as they could. I don't remember how much they were asking for, but...
Yeah, well, a lot of times these will go well over, and it's just because they have so many fans out there that just want to contribute.
Well, and Kickstarter is such a great way to do a lot of different things. If up on my screen now is a band, a friend of mine's, Assembly of Dust, and these guys Reed wanted to come out with a new album and went up on Kickstarter and raised, I think, about $35,000 is what he wanted to raise to do the album, do the tour, raised it. The CD's coming out now. He's on tour. He's in San Francisco in the beginning of March, in case you're wondering. But I love how Kickstarter allows, and he was signed to a label once a long time ago. It didn't work. I love how it lets people continue to fund their passions.
Yes.
If you have fans will pay, and you can do things like Video Game High School. What's your Kickstarter, Brian? What are you going to do?
My brain is actually spinning right now because I don't know. I don't know an answer to that, but I will say this, that the thing I like about Kickstarter is that it does build a different type of relationship with somebody and, say, their community, and so the whole patronage movement, I think, is a real big deal.
I wonder, I agree, and I wonder going back to Video Game High School, whether that's even enough for what they want to do. I don't know if you saw this, but I said they raised $273,000 for season 1. Well, up on their blog, they put up how much they actually spent to do season 1, and it was $636,010.
Wow.
And this is great. You've got to check out this blog post because it goes through the entire cost breakdown, all the different things they did. So pre-production, art, cast, crew, fulfillment. I thought it's really interesting if you look at that they only spent about $20,000 on the cast. And as you know, in a real Hollywood movie, you spend a lot more than that on your cast. So certainly they called in some favors, even at the $636,000 level. I wonder, as they do more and more of these, people are going to want more money. There are going to be more people with their hands out. They didn't spend as much on pre-production as in most places. Usually spend 10, 15%. You can't spend that much on pre-production. They spent, looks like, probably about 2 or 3%. So they spent a lot of money on special effects, though, which is good because that's what they do. But I just think it's interesting the way that movies are being funded. We see this Google movie with Vince Vaughn and the guy from A Night at the Museum, and it's huge, big budget. And then you got a couple of internet guys going out making something that is as captivating, but it's a lot less.
Yeah. I'm really excited for him. I think that's really awesome that he's just going out there and doing what he's really passionate about. And although I've never actually watched the show until, well, earlier today, now I'm kind of interested in it.
Have you seen Video Game High School?
Yeah, I sure have.
Yeah, what'd you think?
Yeah, well, my son is 16 years old, and that's like right up his alley. I think it's really cool, and that show actually inspired my son to get into video production.
That's great. That's awesome. Yeah, those guys. Freddie Wong has inspired a whole bunch of people to do that, which is one of the greatest things he's done. My son, so over Super Bowl, we had a couple people over, a bunch of 13-year-olds in the basement watching the Xbox. They stopped playing games. They're like, oh, what are we going to watch? You know, a couple of them wanted to watch Battlestar Galactica. A couple of them wanted to watch Futurama. It was a big battle. Lowest common denominator, they settled on Video Game High School. So
That's cool.
at least it was good enough for them to settle on and all agree on, so it had to have been good. All right. Hey, look, I think it's great stuff. Well, I want to move on to our last story of the day, and this is a little bit more of a kind of a changing of the guard story about Valve. So the guys do Half-Life, Steam. Looks like they had a little bit of a layoff this week. Story up here, Gamasutra, where they looked at a couple people, about 25 people laid off. The folks over at Valve came out with a statement on their blog. Gabe Newell said, "We're not canceling any projects. We're not really commenting. It's not a big deal." I wonder, does this indicate, Shannon, a problem for PC gaming?
I'm really worried about it because they've been talking about all this new hardware for Steam, like Steambox and Valve games coming out on new hardware systems. And one of the people that got fired, and she tweeted out, was Jerry Ellsworth. And she's been working on new
Jerry
controllers.
Ellsworth, really? She's also great on
Yeah.
YouTube. Check her out.
Yeah, she got fired, and I was so upset with that. And I can say it because she did tweet out and say that she did get fired from Valve. And
yeah, she's actually Ben Heck's
she was
nemesis.
working on those controllers,
Yeah, exactly.
the new Valve controllers. So that makes me wonder
Interesting.
if they fired her and she's been contracted for a year to do these new controllers for them. Who are these other people that they are firing for sure? And are they all working on hardware as well?
Well, I will say that the Gamasutra guys, is it Gamasutra or Gamasutra?
Oh, I don't even know.
How do you pronounce it? I don't know.
Tomato, tomato.
I don't know. I'm thinking Gamasutra. But anyway, so Moby Frank, character designer on Half-Life 2. Jason Holtman, director of business development. Keith Huggins did special effects, was at Weta, Digital Domain. Tom Leonard, the CTO of BuzzPad, Looking Glass Studios, who wrote a bunch of AI stuff for Thief. Realm Lovejoy, a Japanese ex-monk, 3D computer animation. Mark Nagel was a game counselor at Nintendo, was at Sierra Entertainment as a tester. Anyway, wide range of, the guy, Ray Rate, who worked on creating Gollum's facial system for Lord of the Rings. So
wow.
a lot of different people, you know, along with Jerry. I didn't realize Jerry was one of them too. I thought this was an indication of more of that move to hardware, but it doesn't sound that way. Brian, what's your take on this?
Well, I think that entire industry has some very interesting challenges ahead of it. And there's
You think it's screwed? You think they're all screwed?
I don't know that it's
Come on, Doug, don't mince your words.
Look, yeah, it's certainly challenged, and I don't know that the right people are in the right positions to lead this next move for the industry. I think that this is a group of people who came up in some really good years. They've only seen great years. That, you know, there's a motto that constraint forces creativity, right? And so sometimes it takes a whole new regime of leadership to bring in the right people. And I will tell you what's pervasive within the industry, and it's not just in gaming, it's across the whole PC industry. Do more with less.
Yep. Do you think the tablet and the phone are going to replace gaming, even hardcore gaming?
Not hardcore.
No.
Not hardcore.
Heck no.
Is hardcore gaming going to grow? Is that a growing market or is it a stable
For
market?
me, it is.
Well, yeah. I spend more time with my Xbox now than I did 3 years ago.
I agree. I do too. Well, I don't think hardcore gaming is going to be growing too much, just because the cell phone and tablet market has been growing exponentially in the past year.
Yeah, it's almost like it brings more gamers into the fold, right, Brian?
It certainly widens the opportunity for gaming, but it's a different type of gaming experience.
Yeah, it is.
So, one last question for you. I think it's really interesting. And you run the Pivot Conference every year. It's very social media, social for business. Is gaming enter into that, and has it, or is it going to? Is it become something that you guys focus on from a social perspective at the conference when you talk to the business leaders in social?
Well, just to clarify, it's not a social media conference for business.
No, I'm sorry. Tell me what it is.
But it does explore how disruptive technology is impacting business from the outside in and inside out, and social's part of it. And to answer your question, I mean, yeah, gamification is part of it. What we learned in Pivot is that Gamification, I think, was largely relegated to consumer engagement. So how do we get game theory introduced and people buying and sharing and doing reviews? But what a lot of enterprise organizations have learned is that game theory is actually more important with employees. How do you increase participation, collaboration, cross-departmental engagement? And gamification actually is a huge, huge thing inside.
So it sounds like that even to some of the people who may have gotten laid off from Valve, they got a lot to do. There's a lot going on in the game world. It may just not be at Valve and Steam and some of these game publishers. All right, Shannon, last question. What game are you playing now?
Skyrim still.
Skyrim, still on Skyrim?
Yep.
Game that goes on forever, doesn't it?
Oh, but I did get the Borderlands, the new Borderlands.
Oh,
game.
nice, nice.
That one's really fun.
I am still working my way through Call of Duty. How about you, Brian?
Halo.
Halo, all right.
Oh, and the new Bioshock game is coming out soon. I'm so excited.
You know what I'm excited about? I think I said this last week too, but I went to Tara Long over at Destruction and I said I was wicked jealous of her because she got to spend 3 hours with SimCity.
Oh,
I am so
yeah.
speaking. PC games to me are not dead because they're coming out with a new SimCity.
That's pretty awesome.
I'm gonna have to take a week of vacation when that comes out. That's it for this week's Downloaded. I want to thank my guests, Shannon Morse from Hack5. Thanks a lot for coming over. And
anytime.
Brian Solis, principal at the Altimeter Group. Make sure you buy all 5 of his books. And that's it. If you have any questions or comments, make sure you post them down below here in the YouTube comments section. We'll be answering them, and post your own opinions about what you think. And until next time, you have been watching Downloaded. Level.